Republicans have a lot of Senate pickup opportunities in 2024. Specifically, there are 3 Democratic seats in Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia that voted for Trump by at least 8 points back in 2020. Additionally, 5 other Democratic incumbents are in hot water in the states of Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Democrats have a lot of seats to defend, and it looks like they're going to lose the Senate. However, exactly how much could the Republicans end up gaining in this Senate election? In today's video, we will find out. Now, first off, in the Republican safe states, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, as well as its special election, Missouri, the state of Tennessee, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Indiana are all considered safe states for the Republican Party, even in a normal case scenario. West Virginia being a flip, as incumbent Democrat Joe Manchin will not be seeking re-election in this deep red state, in a state that voted for Trump by almost 40 points back in 2020. Now, going to some of the other states in this scenario that would be safe for the Republican Party in the state of Florida. Florida can certainly be safe in a best-case scenario for Republicans. After all, Republicans had really strong performances there in 2022, where incumbent U.S. Senator Marco Rubio won re-election by 16 points, while incumbent Republican Governor Ron DeSantis won re-election by 20 points. Additionally, Florida has been heavily trending Republican, especially in its largest county, Miami-Dade County, home to a huge Cuban population. These are areas that have been heavily trending away from Democrats. Additionally, in the state of Texas, where Ted Cruz had a fight for his life back in 2018, defeating Democrat Beto O'Rourke by just 2.6 percentage points. Nevertheless, in 2020, Democrats did end up losing the state by 5.6, despite the fact that Joe Biden pulled hundreds of millions of dollars into the state of Texas. Now, I do believe that in a really normal case scenario, Ted Cruz will win by about 7 to 8. However, in the best case, definitely by a safe margin. Now, Democrats still have safe states on their list. In a best case scenario, Democrats still have their safe states. California, Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, and the state of Maine are still considered safe. Additionally, the states of Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Washington are all considered likely even in a best-case scenario. As well as that, the state of Virginia and the state of New Mexico are still going to be likely margins, despite them being relatively competitive states at a presidential level. Tim Kaine and Martin Henrik, Tim Kaine representing the state of Virginia in the Senate, while New Mexico's Martin Henrik are very strong incumbents. They should be able to win re-election even in a less favorable year in a best-case scenario for the Republican Party. Now, going to some of the other states on this list, I'm just simply going to go geographically, starting with the state of Montana. Incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester of the state of Montana is in some real trouble. Back in 2018, he was able to win re-election against Matt Rosendale by 3.5%. However, several things are going pretty poorly for Jon Tester. First of all, back in 2018, the generic ballot was about D plus 8. Right now, it's about D plus 0.8. And the fact was, Jon Tester won by an extremely narrow margin. So if the generic ballot was really about D plus 1 back then, he would have lost re-election. Additionally, this is on a presidential election year. And guess what? Split-ticket voting has become increasingly rare. It's going to be really difficult to see how Tester ends up getting enough people to split ticket for him to end up defeating Sheehy. Never mind even a best-case scenario. Even in a pretty normal case scenario, Sheehy would be the favored. In a best-case scenario, Jon Tester would stand no chance in such a red state against a relatively strong Republican candidate. Sheehy will win this best-case scenario by a likely margin. Now going to the state of Nevada. Nevada, in a general election where the conditions are pretty normal, is kind of 50-50. Jackie Rosen's a pretty popular Democratic incumbent. She defeated a Republican incumbent, Dean Heller, back in 2018 by 5%. Joe Biden was also able to win the state in 2020. Nevertheless, here the state has been trending red, especially Clark County, home to Las Vegas, home to a huge Hispanic population, as well as some of the rural areas have all been trending towards the Republicans. The state in general has been shifting away from the Democrats because of the fact that there's a lot of Hispanic voters in the state, and those Hispanic voters have been just moving and migrating away from the Democratic Party. Additionally, Republicans have a pretty strong floor of support because, again, there's not a lot of really significantly blue areas in the state of Nevada because Clark County is always competitive, Washoe County is always competitive, and Republicans have a sea of red to really consolidate some of their ballots. At the end of the day, this will be a competitive race. However, in the best case scenario, Sam Brown could definitely end up edging out Jackie Rosen by a lead margin in this state. Now going to the state of Arizona. Back in 2018, Kristen Sinema was able to win by about 2.4% against pretty unpopular Republican Martha McSally. Now moving on to the state of Arizona, where admittedly the Republican candidate Kari Lake is not very strong. That's because she essentially lost the governor's race in 2022 to Democrat Katie Hobbs, who was essentially criticized for being in her basement 24/7. And guess what? Kari Lake still ended up losing in that race that she was definitely expected to win. However, Democrats also have their fair share of weaknesses. In 2020, the state was decided by just 0.3%, and the Democratic candidate Ruben Gallego in the Senate race is someone who is more progressive. Progressive candidates generally don't do very well in the state of Arizona in general statewide elections. Now, currently, I do have Ruben Gallego as the favored candidate. However, in the best case scenario, of course, Kari Lake can edge this one out. Now, going to the state of Minnesota. The Democratic incumbent is insanely popular, Amy Klobuchar. She won all 3 of her Senate elections by more than 20 points, and she's able to win really Republican counties, for example, Stearns County, right? This was a county that Amy Klobuchar carried. While we look at the 2020 presidential election results in Stearns County, this was a county that voted for Donald Trump by 23%, for example. And as you can see, Amy Klobuchar is really popular. There's no way that the Republicans could win, especially because they don't have any noticeable candidates in that race. Minnesota, even in the best case scenario, is likely to the Democratic Party. Now going to the state of Wisconsin. In the state of Wisconsin here back in 2020, this was a state that was decided by just 0.63%. However, in the Senate race back in 2018 here, the incumbent Democrat Tammy Baldwin did win by close to 11%. That being said, the Republican was not at all funded in this race. Republicans have given up in this Senate race before it even started. Now, in the best case scenario, I could see Tammy Baldwin losing, especially because polling in the state head-to-head has become increasingly tight. Additionally, Republicans have a pretty decent floor in the state, and the fact is I do expect Donald Trump to be able to carry the state on the presidential level, and considering that split ticket is becoming increasingly seldom, there is definitely a good argument that this race could become competitive. Nevertheless, right now, I still have the Democrats winning, but in the best case scenario, I could definitely see the Republican Party just narrowly edging this one out in the state of Wisconsin. That brings the Republicans to 54 and Democrats to 42. Now, before we continue, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Election Predictions and Analysis, if you want additional high-quality election predictions content. Additionally, if you would like to join our memberships, be sure to consider that for as little as $1.99 per month. Anyways, let's get started on the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan, Elisa Slotkin, a Democratic representative from the district, is going to face Republican Mike Rogers. There's a lot of people who don't know who Mike Rogers is, and as a result, he has fallen behind in the polls. Now, it is noticeable that Elisa Slotkin has never crossed 50% essentially in most of these polls, at least with undecided voters. And essentially, if people were to go out to the polls today, I bet that Slotkin would certainly win. However, in the best case scenario, Rogers would still have a shot. After all, the state of Michigan, at least back in 2018, was actually the most competitive out of the 3 Rust Belt states. The state of Pennsylvania voted for Bob Casey, the Democratic incumbent, by 13. Tammy Baldwin won in Wisconsin by 11, while Michigan was decided by about 7%, which was still the closest of the 3 states. Additionally, the state of Michigan, you could see that because Democrats don't have an incumbent, that the incumbency factors essentially dropped in this state. And the fact is, the generic ballot is certainly not as favorable for the Democratic Party in the state of Michigan as it was back in 2018. Now, in a normal case, I would still say that the Democrats' Elisa Slotkin is heavily favored, but in the best case scenario, I could see the state of Michigan turning on the Democratic Party. Now going to the state of Ohio. Ohio was already a state that was difficult for the Democratic Party. Now, if you look at the polling in the state of Ohio right now, Sherrod Brown does still enjoy a lead over the Republican candidate Bernie Moreno. However, it is noticeable that Brown is under 50%, and the race has tightened dramatically over the past 2 weeks or so. As Moreno's name recognition continues to grow, and as more and more voters make a decision between these 2 candidates, chances are they're going to end up voting and siding with their own party thanks to the reduced split-ticket voting. And although Moreno is not the best candidate, the fact is Trump was able to win the state by 8 in 2020, and if anything, in 2024, he's probably going to win the state by double digits. Although I think that Sherrod Brown would appeal to a lot of working-class voters, voters in areas like Manhattan County, in areas like Trumbull County, it's probably not going to be enough for Sherrod Brown to again win this Senate race. After all, back in 2018, in a much more favorable year for the Democratic Party, Sherrod Brown only won by 6.8. Now, 6.8% for a Democrat in Ohio may seem very impressive, and to be honest, it is. However, some polls had shown that Sherrod Brown was up by 15 points, and the Republican candidate, James B. Rodacci, essentially gave up this race in the summer. Republicans essentially withdrew all their ads, and they never expected to really win the state or even make it that competitive. And still, Sherrod Brown did win by that large of a margin in a D+8 environment. Now, in a much more competitive environment, it's going to look a lot harder for Sherrod Brown, especially on a presidential year. And the fact is, this is a best case scenario for the Republicans. Of course, in this case, it would go for the Republicans by either a lead or a likely margin. Of course, in the best case, I'll put it as likely. Now, going to the state of Pennsylvania. Although Pennsylvania polling has shown that this race is a bit tighter, and some people are reportedly saying that the Republican challenger, Dave McCormick, has a shot over Bob Casey. The fact is, Bob Casey is a very well-known incumbent. Casey is someone who was able to win re-election in 2018 by 13 points against Lou Barletta. Now, the state of Pennsylvania is generally very competitive at the presidential level. Joe Biden won the state by 1.2 over Donald Trump, and Trump won the state by 0.7 over Hillary Clinton back in 2016. The fact that someone like Bob Casey is able to win by such a large margin, and the fact that he still has a 7.8% lead and is maintaining at close to 50% of the polling, suggests that Bob Casey is probably not going to lose re-election. Casey is a political juggernaut in the state. Out of his 6 statewide elections, 5 of them has resulted in 10-point plus victories for the incumbent Bob Casey. The closest race he ever had in the state of Pennsylvania was an 8-point race back in 2012. Again, I'm just not convinced that the Republicans at this point in time could win the state even in a best-case scenario. I'm going to put it as tilt for the Democratic Party. Now going to the state of New Jersey, which is surprisingly interesting because although you might expect the state of New Jersey to be really, really favorable and dominant for the Democrats, that's not necessarily the case. I'm just going to pull up New Jersey polling and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so in the state of New Jersey, what happens is that the Democrat Andy Kim is only up by about 6% in the most recent poll in a 3-way race between Andy Kim, the Republican, and also Bob Menendez, who is the incumbent senator who is running as an independent. Why is Bob Menendez running as an independent if he could have ran as a Democrat? Well, the Democrats would not have really nominated him again because Bob Menendez was someone who was involved in corruption, someone who was convicted in New York City and faces now up to 20 years in prison for those corruption charges. However, he's still running so that he can essentially get a bunch of campaign funds from his campaign donations to fund his legal expenses. As a result, though, there's essentially 2 Democrats in this one Senate race, which could do a lot of vote splitting. If Bob Menendez is able to get and garner a lot of this support, perhaps he actually has a shot of helping Republicans deliver victory here. Especially because although he's only polling at 3% in this poll, he's polling at 6% here, he's polling at 7% here, right? There's a realistic shot that somehow the Republican Party could end up winning if Bob Menendez was to split like 15% of the vote. However, that is incredibly unlikely, and I still have the state of New Jersey in the lead blue column. So what's the summary here? Well, in short, this would be an absolutely dominating election for the Republican Party. Sure, right, a state like Pennsylvania is still in the tilt Democratic column, but the fact is, Republicans have gained 7 seats. West Virginia by a safe margin, Montana and Ohio by likely margins, Nevada, Arizona by lead margins, and Michigan and Wisconsin by tilt margins. Guess what? You really can't ask for more than a 7-seat gain in the 2024 Senate elections, especially in such a polarized environment. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Again, be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.